Hi everybody and welcome back. This is one of the first videos that I'm going to do on adding and subtracting fractions. So I'm going to show this using the CRA approach, and I'm going to do it using an area model and a number line for my representation. I strongly suggest and believe that any operations that you're using with fractions, anytime you're teaching operations with fractions, you must teach it conceptually, because when you think about when students learn fractions and then they learn to operate with fractions, when they're trying to add and subtract fractions, they have to find common denominators. Then when they multiply fractions, they simply just multiply the numerators and the denominators, and then when they divide fractions, they take the divisor, they find the reciprocal, and then they multiply it by the dividend. It's three different steps, and in fact, if you use addition and subtraction as being two separate operations, it's 4 different steps for 4 different operations or 4 different methods, and this is why students get confused. So I'm going to show you how I would get the students to start working with addition and subtraction. I'm going to start with something very simple. I'm going to start with the same denominators. I'm going to say 1/4 plus 2/4. Okay, so I'm just going to add these two together. So start simple. I know that 2/4 is the same as a half, but you want them to be able to make that connection between adding the numerators and having the common denominators. So why is it that we don't just simply get an answer of 3/8? That's what I need the students to understand. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find my quarter. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to fold it like this. Different methods of folding should be encouraged for different types of problems. So you'll see what I mean. When you're adding two things together using bits of paper, it's easier when they're kind of folded in the same way. So if I looked at this and I unpacked it or unfolded it, this is going to be my 1/4, so I'm going to keep that folded, and I'm going to say this is my 1/4 here. So that is my 1/4. Then I want to make my 2/4. So I take this and I fold it again in half, and in half again. Folding paper for students is fantastic practice. Get them to do it for everything as much as possible. Find these sheets of paper. You can get square ones, you can get circle ones. They're fabulous. Officeworks, packs of like 180, packs of 300. They're fantastic. So I always keep them in my classrooms and in my little suitcase. So this is 1/4, which means this is 2/4. Okay, so I want 1/4 and I want to add 2/4 to this. I can see that all together. If I was to compare that to my whole, which let's use a different color for the whole, let's use yellow, I can see that that makes up 3/4. So 1/4 plus 2/4 will make 3/4 of my whole. And that is the type of understanding that you want them to build. It may seem simple, but you really need to hone in on that fact that they don't simply just add the numerators and the denominators. That's what they would do with whole numbers. That's whole number thinking, but they don't do that with fraction, because fractions are a part of a whole. So then I would get them to represent this. They can represent it in the same way if they want. So they can say, you know, one piece of paper divided into 4 parts, and this is my 1. And then another piece of paper divided into same number of parts. This is 2. So then they, you know, I mean, they can do this and simply draw it again and see that that is 3/4. But I like to sometimes encourage them to use a number line, because getting the students to place things on a number line, particularly fractions, is super, super important, because you want the students to see the fractions as a part whole, but also as a number that falls along a number line. This is another practiced skill for your students. So what you want them to do is they're dealing with quarters. So I'm going to partition my number line into quarters like this, and I'm going to label my number line like that, and then I'll get them to start doing addition on their number line. So they start with 1/4, so this is their starting point right there, and then they want to add another 2/4, so they would go 1, 2, 2/4. So this is probably not a fabulous way of doing it, so get them to start on their number line. This is their starting position, 1/4 plus 2/4. They end up here at 3/4. So that is how they would represent it on their number line. And then for their abstract, under their abstract, they would just write 1/4 plus 2/4 equals 3/4. Or they could do this if you really want them to present it fully, like that, 3/4. So just different ways of representing things. Again, as I said, you want them to be able to build their understanding, develop that, or build that mental representation in their mind, place that mental representation onto their bit of paper, onto their whiteboard, and then bring it back to the process. So CRA model using fractions with the same denominators. In the next one, I'm going to go back to related denominators. I'll see you then. Till next time. Bye.